Shalom, Yahweh Shem Yahushua Barakatah. This is the ISUPK, started out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York in 1969, under Commanding General Yohana. And we're here to teach the truth of the Bible to so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American Indians are the real Israelites according to the scriptures. It is, of course, our Lashawan Qadash Friday ISUPK San Antonio Ancient Hebrew class. We got some more scriptures on the screen here. Last class, we went over a couple of scriptures in Proverbs. The title of that class was Ancient Wisdom. And not only is it ancient, meaning it was written a long time ago, but ancient in the language that it was written in, or at least the closest representation we can get to it right here. And so this is Proverbs chapter 21. We have 4 verses today that we want to go over. And when we go over these verses, what we want to do is we want to start building more vocabulary. We want to start getting a better understanding of how the sentences come together, how these root words are put together with modifying characters that help it fit into the sentence. That's always something that we want to get more and more practice with. And the more that we see these things, the easier it's going to be when it comes to the Sabbath service for brothers and sisters out there that partake in the Sabbath service all across the school and across the nation and the 4 corners of the earth. You're going to see that this actually really does help when it comes to reading it, because we want to get more fluent with it. The only challenge is that when we read them in the Interlinear Bible Hub app, that it's not in this particular, it's not in this alphabet, it's in the Assyrian alphabet. But what I like to do is on Fridays, I like to use the ancient Hebrew, and on Saturdays, everybody together uses the Assyrian. The reason why that's important is we want to be versatile, and we want to be able to switch between the modern Hebrew and the ancient Hebrew real quick, you know what I mean? So that we get a good understanding of both. It's a requirement to know both. And so we want to get as much practice with both of them as possible. But what you see on the board here, this is more or less the scripture. I went ahead and wrote down all the scriptures. We're going to, of course, go over them word for word so we can see what each word is actually saying. But while there's nothing else scribbled on the screen here, we have just the Hebrew by itself, which gives us a chance to easily see the entire scripture to let us practice reading it. Okay, so of course we're gonna translate it, but we're gonna also read it word for word. Now this is, of course, as close as I could possibly get it, because what we do when I'm writing these is a lot of times I'll go to the root word and I'll make sure that we pronounce at the very least the root word correctly, and then all of the other characters that add to it are going to sometimes modify the way that it sounds. But for the most part, when it comes to the ancient dialect, if you pronounce the root word, that's more than likely going to be the correct form. Now, what we're going to see is we're going to start off in verse 1, and we're going to read each one twice, and then we're going to go in and we're going to start breaking down each scripture word for word. So the first one, this is Proverbs chapter 21 and verse 1. Matter of fact, let me give y'all a second so that y'all can see the screen by itself. This will give you time to write down what's on the board. And during this time, I want to just take a second to share the class while y'all get a chance to look at what's on the board here. So this is a good chance for brothers and sisters to practice writing down these sentences, practice writing down these characters. And if for whatever reason, if you want to continue with that practice, you can easily go into the Bible Hub app and go to the interlinear version, and you'll see these very same characters, but in the Assyrian Hebrew, where you can then just practice writing it in whichever character set you want to use. And so I'm gonna go ahead and give y'all a second to do that while I'm sharing the class real quick. Y'all give me 1 second here. Let's see here. Just practice writing.
The ground forces have also been moving.
Give it 1 more minute here. So again, we got these 4 scriptures here. We're going to start with verse 1, and it sounds like this: Al Thakwana Ba Anashya. That's Al Thakwana Ba Anashya. Ra'ai Wa'al Tatha Ayawa La Ha Yawath. Okay, I was going to read. Let's practice that again. And of course, if you look on the right side of the screen, you'll see these very same characters right here. And then, of course, the one right next to it is the Assyrian version, but they are pronounced the exact same. We're not using any vowels. We're just pronouncing it straight up as it originally was. So we have the whole alphabet right here for you to use as a reference. If there's any particular characters that you may not have seen before, you can refer to this side of the screen where you can see how to pronounce those characters. But going back to this one, we're going to try it one more time. It's Al Tha Qana'a Ba Anashya. Ba Anashya. Ra'ai Ya'al. It's like it Wa'al. Tha Ayawa. Laha Yawath. Verse 2. Kaya Shad Yahaga Labam Wa'aimal Shapath Yaham Thadabarna. Let's read that one more time. Kaya Shad Yahaga Labam Wa'aimal Shapath Yaham Thadabarna. Yeah, Thadabarna. Okay. Let's go ahead and start breaking these down. We'll read more of these later on. And so the first word right here, let's go ahead and translate this. If any of you want to follow along with it in the interlinear app, you'll see it again in the Assyrian Hebrew, but you can follow along with us too. But either way, we're gonna translate them. So starting at verse 1, verse 1 says not, which is quite interesting because la'ah means no, but al means not. Not. And that's the entire phrase, al. Okay. Pretty straightforward. This next one right here is qana, which is the root word qana'a right here. But we have a modifier at the beginning of it. And so the way this is pronounced is tha qana'a. Tha qana'a. And what this means is do be envious. Now, one thing you'll see about Hebrew is that you'll actually have a separate word that joins to a certain phrase in order to say for it to not be done. But do be envious. Tha would represent that part at the beginning of this where we're saying do be. But envious is the actual word that is the root word used here. And I'm going to bracket this right here so y'all can see it's separated from the modifier. So qana'a means envious. Qana'a means envious. We're going to go ahead and make that our first vocabulary word for the day. This is a pretty good one to know. This is going to be Hebrew Strong's Concordance definition 7065. I'll go ahead and we'll keep that written down here on the bottom left side of the screen. This is going to be H7065, and I'm going to write it here. It's qana'a. Qana'a, which means envious. What are some of the other definitions of this? It's saying jealousy. Let's see. Jealousy. That's another phrase for it. Jealous. Qana'a. So the beginning of this precept is al tha qana'a. Al tha qana'a. Not do be envious. One thing about Hebrew is that it is, of course, sentence structured backwards from English. It's a little bit closer to how Spanish is structured, where Spanish has a lot of phrases that we consider backwards in English. And so we like to refer to it. Sometimes we think of an example of that. You might, if you ever seen Star Wars, you may hear how Yoda talks. He talks backwards. So it's a little bit more of an ancient style of speaking. Instead of saying do not be envious, it's saying not do be envious. If you were to actually take the translation and read it word for word, it's a different sentence structure than what we see in English. So just keep that in mind. Whenever you're adding for something to not be done, you'll usually say al or la'a at the beginning of that thought. And that's exactly why the Ten Commandments is like that. You'll actually see it say la'a and then whatever it is that you're not supposed to do. You understand? So moving forward here, al taqwana'a ba'anashya. Ba'anashya is going to be the next word. Ba'anashya. Interesting thing about this one is that the root word is ayash. But right here it says anash. So what is it saying? This is actually saying man or men. Do not be envious of men. Do not be envious of men. Ba-anashya. Ba-anashya. You have a preposition here of ba. And you'll see, let me see if I can write this. This of right here is represented with this ba. If you look at our prepositions, you see that there are different things that can be added to the beginning of a root word that can actually mean that'll use this character. It'll either mean in, at, with. We see the example here where it says of. But if you were to interchange that, that would actually make a lot of sense. Like, for example, if I said with instead of, do not be envious with men. Do not be envious of men. Those are very similar. Do not be envious at men. You'll see that ba is used for all of those examples. And so any of those can work. But this is what it's translated to. This is what it translates to. It says, do not be envious of men. What type of men? So you'll notice that, again, because the sentence structure is backwards from English, it's going to give you the subject, but then it's going to give you the description of that subject and the characters that come afterwards. So you have a word right here that's going to tell you what kind of men to not be envious of. So keep in mind that it's, again, different from English. So it's, instead of saying do not be envious of this type of men, it's actually saying not do be envious of men, and then the type. So that's just something that you get used to when you see more and more precepts in the ancient Hebrew. You start seeing more of this sentence structure that's, how do I say, pretty much backwards from English. And not only is it backwards from English in the way that it's said, it's also backwards in the way that it's written. That's why Hebrew is read from right to left. So it's almost like reading completely backwards from English. Now, this next phrase right here, this is the entire thing is in the brackets right here. This is ra'ai. Ra'ai. And this is 7451. This is H7451, which means evil. So what is the scripture saying in total? It's saying not to be envious of men of evil. You understand? Or of men evil, or evil men, if you would say it in English. Al taqwana'a ba'anashya ra'ai. Al taqwana'a ba'anashya ra'ai. And of course, it always helps to write down what it is we see on the board. So that's why I want to always step to the side so that y'all can see more of the board here so you can practice it. What I recommend is using a loose leaf paper, and of course, leave some space in between each line. Go ahead and write what you see on the board, skip a line, and then write after you skip the line and the next precept under. And the reason why you want to do that is so that when we do the breakdowns of each character, that you have room to write around it, above it, or however you want to do it. I, of course, am using different colors. That makes it easier. If you want to try that, you're more than welcome to do that. But of course, writing with a pen or something that can't be erased could be tricky. So you want to make sure to use whatever works best for you. Now it says again, al taqwana'a ba'anashya ra'ai. not to be envious of men of evil. Wa'al, now we know that al is used right here. When we say wa'al, we're obviously adding a wa at the beginning of this phrase. This is the same thing as the first word that is used, but we have a wa. And so this thought is going to be joined to what is said right here at the end with the remainder of this precept. And so we're saying wa'al, which means and not. But in the ancient Hebrew, again, we use a different form of English when it was translated. And so you can either say and not, or you can use this phrase right here, nor. Nor is like saying also, but when it comes to not doing something. So if you say something like, I have apple and a banana, right? I have this and I have that. Or you could say, I don't have this and I don't have that. It's almost like you're adding something to something. But when you don't have something and then you also don't have something else, or when you're not supposed to do something and then also not do something else, you use the phrase nor. Don't do this, nor do this. Don't commit adultery, nor steal. Don't kill, nor worship other gods, right? So to continue, it's a continuation of this first thought right here, but we're just basically saying nor. So instead of saying, because normally when we use wa in creating a list of things, like say for instance our blessings prayer, when we're going through the ranking structure, we always say wa and then the next rank, and then wa and then the next rank. But wa normally is translated to and when we're actually adding things to something that is being added to, like in a positive sense. When you're taking something away, again, you're just using nor, but the wa is still right there. So if we read this straight through, it's al thaqwana'a ba'anasha ra'ai wa'al. Again, wa'al means nor. Now we have this next word right here, ta'ayawa. Ta'ayawa. Let's get this root word right here. Where's it at? Ta'ayawa. Now this right here, awa, is the root word. Ayah is how it's pronounced right here. But it's saying awa, which means desire. Desire is awa. I want to actually use this as as one of our vocabulary words today, mainly because it has a slightly different root word than how it's pronounced right here. It's a little bit modified right here. So the word desire is H183. H183. I'm gonna write that right here. H183. And that's wa. Awa. You'll notice that it says ayah right here, but awa right here. The root word is awa. And that word means greed, desire, craving, that's or to wish for. Awa. Or to covet. So H183, awa, which means greed, desire, craving, wishing, or covet. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So now it's saying, do not be envious of evil men, nor desire. And then this last word right here, la hayawath. La hayawath. La hayawath. this part right here, haya, is the root word that's used in this phrase. What we're saying right here is to be. To be. Now, there's a reason why there's more on here, and I'll explain that once we get to this word right here. But la hayawath. Haya is the root word, and that word is to be or to do or to become. There you go. To be. So haya actually is close enough to the root word. There's normally a ha at the end of it. But we know la is the preposition or the character that's used at the beginning of this phrase, and we know that when we do a toasting for the Sabbath service and we say la yasha'Allah, we're saying to Israel. So it's no different right here. We're saying la hayawath, la hayawath. So the root word right here again is be, and it's haya. But because we're saying wath, that tells us that what it is that we're saying is dealing with a plural version of something. And so that goes right along with here, because the last word of this precept is a thumb. A thumb means them. And it's implied that the word with is there, which can actually be with the ba. Technically, you say ba a thumb, and that would be correct. But the ba is not right there. When it was translated to English, it just says a thumb. So we're actually saying la hayawath, a thumb. The wath at the end, these two characters, wa and ta, are there because this is plural too. A tha is the singular phrase for you, but a thumb with a ma at the end is the plural version of that word, and that's why this is also included to be modified to say the same thing. So if we read that whole scripture, we went ahead and broke down verse 1 right here, Proverbs 21:1. We're going to read it in Hebrew, and then we're going to translate it to English. So again, it says, Al ta kwana'a ba anashya ra'ai wa'al ta ta ayawa la hayawath atham. Okay, let's read it one more time. Al taqwana'a ba anashya ra'ai wa al tata ayawa la hayawath atham. And what we said was not to be envious of men of evil, nor desire to be with them. Okay, and that just goes without saying. Just understanding that scripture, it's quite one of those obvious things, but at the same time, a lot of people fall into things like peer pressure. Part of that pressure comes from the things that people that do evil may have because of the things that they do. And that's why these next scriptures are going to really start to round out that understanding of how important it is to build discipline. Because it's one thing to not be envious of somebody that lives in an evil way. If you think of like a lot of bad examples, you understand, people in their high status in society, Diddy, for example, right? Somebody that has done evil, somebody that has lived a certain type of life that has made a lot of people covet the way that he lives. But you have to understand not to be envious of those things. Those people have gotten those goods in an ill way. You can't expect their life to completely go smooth. There's going to be some kind of judgment at some point. So it says, do not be envious of men of evil, nor desire to be with them. Well, you can best believe that being around somebody that's doing evil is going to put you in a position where you can be punished for the same thing they're being punished for. If you're around people that do drugs, if you're around people that do a lot of bad things like robbery or killing, then when the time comes for them to be judged, maybe they're caught by the police, maybe perhaps you might be considered to be somebody who is dealing with them, and you also too could be punished. I forget the name of that phrase. What's that called? An accomplice. When you become an accomplice to someone that's doing evil, you don't want to be around that because there's punishments that come into play when you're around them. So it just goes without saying, people become a product in their environment, and so we understand that too. A lot of our people grow up in a bad situation where they're constantly, well, what seems to be that they're forced to be around people that do evil. But the scriptures is clearly saying that if at all possible to avoid that, don't be around them nor envy them. You understand? So moving forward, with the next scripture, we're going to go right into verse 2. And it's pretty much going to start to round out the same thought, but in a different way. A lot of times, Proverbs is a good book of the Bible to go to for a lot of these one-liners or very quick phrases, but a lot of times those phrases build up to a complete thought. They're not always just going to start and just be completely one scripture and then a whole different thought. A lot of times you'll see each sentence will build upon a previous precept, which may give you an even deeper understanding of what was said before. So when we go to verse 2 says kaya, which means for. Kaya. And that's the entire thing. What you see right here is I'm just bracketing the root words. Okay. You'll see some of these words that are not in the bracket. Those are these modifying characters that give you an understanding of how to pronounce it. Or it's just how it's translated. So you may see some of these other things. The more that you see them, the more that you'll have a better understanding of how to pronounce them and what they mean. So when we say kaya, we're saying for. This word right here, shad, means violence. Violence. And that's just two characters, sha and da, for violence. For violence, shad, that's both of these right here. Yahaga. Yahaga. Haga is the root word. This word means devices. I'm trying to think if there's another word. Yeah. Devise. The root word here is devise. But because this is a different form of the word that makes it, hold on. Oh, you got a key? Most High Christ. Yahaga means devises. Another thing, and you know what? I think I want to make this one of our vocabulary words because I want to make sure we get a good understanding of what this word really means. Because there's other words that can be used in place of this, which help you understand that scripture the same way, but might make it easier. So it's saying devices, that's H1897. So I'm going to go ahead and write that here on the bottom left of the screen. H1897. Yeah.
That's a custom order, so I'm putting him on there, but comparing that with the shorts.
Yeah, God. Yeah, God. This word means devise, but it could also mean mutter. It also means meditate. Which means to think on. That's really what devising is, or declare. It's interesting because muttering and declaring means the same thing, and meditate and devise mean the same thing. Basically, it's like preparing thought, planning. That's another word you can use for violence, devises or plans. Violence, meditate, meaning this becomes your thought process. Devising means to think into existence or to plan something. Okay, and that's pronounced kaya, shad, yahaga. Kaya, shad, yahaga. And we go with labam right here. That's the next phrase, labam, which means their heart. The root word right here is lab or labah. And that word means heart or mind. Having a ma at the end, it's kind of no different than when we have a ma at the end of here. Instead of saying a thumb, we're saying a thumb. But what we're saying right here is labam, which means their heart or their mind. For violence devises their mind. So let's read this completely. Kaya, shad, yahaga, labam. Wa'aimal. So that's going to be the next phrase right there. Wa'aimal. What that's saying right here is and troublemaking. So the word and, when we say it right here, and troublemaking, that's going to be your root word right here. And this is aimal. Aimal. That's interesting. Because even the word mal in Spanish means bad, which is crazy. But when we're saying aimal, that actually is saying making trouble or wickedness, mischief, trouble. All of those are interchangeable with troublemaking, aimal. So when we're saying wa'aimal, we're just saying and troublemaking. For violence devises their heart and mind. And troublemaking, shapath yaham is the next word. Shapath yaham. The root word right here is shapah. 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 You'll notice that there's actually a tha right here. And so what that's saying is it's making it plural. So it's declaring that this is going to be something that's being attributed to multiple people. And then so the root word right here is lips. Lips. And what this translates to directly is their lips. Their lips. Shapath yahum. When you see a yahum right there, it's no different than when we're saying yum. Yahum and yum is very similar. So you see that throughout the interlinear version. Sometimes it's used a little different or it's formed a little bit different, but it should mean the same thing. So shapath yahum means their lips. Shapah means lip. Shapath means lips, makes it plural. Okay. Yahum adds the there to it, so it's implying that it's somebody else's, but it's also plural. So it's not saying your lips, it's saying their lips. You understand? So it's saying shapath yahum. Let's get this last word, and then we'll read the whole thing all together. Ha-dabar na. Ha-dabar na. The root word here is dabar. Ha-dabar. And so dabar means to speak or talk. Speak or talk. And so it's saying talk of. When we translate that to the English, what it says in verse 2, it says, for their heart studieth destruction, and their lips talk mischief. So you see how backwards that is, how we pronounce it? For violence devises their heart, and troublemaking their lips speak. So what it's almost like saying troublemaking is what's translated to mischief. Troublemaking is translated to mischief. Again, when we read the King James Version, it says, for their heart studieth destruction. That's this word right here. Labam means heart or mind, because it's not literally their heart, but it's actually what they're thinking. And that's what this word right here means, devices. In the English translation, this is replaced with studying, which means that their mind is active in preparing. That's what studying is. And what is it that is the results of it? It's violence or destruction. This word right here, shad, means violence or destruction. But see how it's put together? For violence. Basically, what it's saying is for their heart devises violence. For their heart devises violence. But when we read it like this, it's kaya shad yahaga labam. For violence devises their heart. For violence devises their heart. So it's kind of like that Yoda speak, because you're actually talking backwards when you read it in Hebrew. You're reading it backwards from English. It's damn near pronounced backwards in English when it's translated. So you have to think. You have to think a little bit more like an ancient style of talking when you're reading in the Hebrew. Kaya shad yahaga labam wa'aimal shapath yaham. Shapath yaham. Dabar na. Thadabarna. Again, for violence devises their heart, and troublemaking their lips speak of. And so again, that goes right along with verse 1, because you don't want to be envious of evil men, because being around them is going to make your mind start thinking about violence. It's going to make your mind start thinking about destruction. And then it'll be evident that that's what you're thinking of, because your lips are going to start saying those things. It's no different than that brother that has his headphones on all the time, and he might be listening to some kind of mumble rap or some kind of trap music. And what it does over time is it may affect the way that he thinks and the way that he speaks, to where now he's talking and thinking about the same things that those examples or those influences that he's been listening to have made him think, because they're doing it. And because of his envy and because of his desire to be around people like that, he's going to take on that same thing. So that's why I said a lot of times you kind of become a product of what you're around. And that's why the scriptures is here to kind of at least tell you that you're not supposed to be giving in to those types of influences. So let's go ahead and read verses 1 and 2 one more time. And again, think of it like how English is. Hebrew is pretty much structured backwards from English. So it's not in the same order. You have to keep that in mind. Al ta qua na'a ba anashia. Ra'ai wa'al tata ayawa la hayawa atham. Do not be envious of evil men, nor desire to be with them. Kaya shad yahaga labam wa aimal shapathyaham tha dabarna. It's saying, for violence devises in their heart, and troublemakers their lips will speak. Or troublemaking, again, when it's translated into English, what did we say it was? Mischief. Troublemaking and mischief means the same thing. And so again, the more that you're around people that are like that, the more your mind starts to thinking about destruction and violence and bad things, and the more that you start to speak about it. So again, that's just, these scriptures are very, very direct. And even when you break them down into Hebrew, and you can see some of our vocabulary words, these definitions can be interchanged with what was chosen when it was translated into the King James Bible in English. So words like envious, another word that you could use to make it easier to understand is jealous. So if you say do not be jealous of evil men, that's the very same thing as saying do not be envious of evil men. So that's consistent. The other example right here is when we use awa, which means where's it at? Desire, craving, covet, to hope for, greed. And do not greed to be with them. Do not crave, do not covet to be with them. And that's the problem. A lot of times when we see bad influences, what we see, you could be a younger brother, you have older cousins, you see them out partying, you see them hanging out with girls that are dressed half naked, and you want to be around that. And what happens is you start craving that, you start wishing for that, and you start coveting after what they have, no matter how they live their life. They could be smoking blunts in the corner of a room. It could be a lot of times, like I said, a really bad environment. We don't want nothing to do with that. So in order to stay pure from that, you want to make sure to not even be around that, if at all possible. Okay. So I know some people got parents that are like that, so you can't really avoid that. But that's why these scriptures are here to give you some discipline to know how to prepare your mind, even when you're around that type of thing. You're not in the spirit of it. You understand? And that's what you want to avoid. So again, coming back to this right here, we're going to continue. We're going to go on to verse 3, which is ba kakama, ba bakama. It's like it. Ba kakama, ba kakama. That's a tough one. Ba kakama. Now the root word right here is chakam. Chakam. And that word means wisdom. So one thing you'll notice is that a lot of times the scriptures will give you the hell, and then it'll start to give you the heaven. It'll give you the bad example, and then it's going to explain why the good example is better. It's going to give you the right spirit behind why to follow through with not doing this, because if you're not doing this, you need something to do. So it's going to give you something to do. It's going to explain what it is you need to do. So it's saying, ba kakama, ba kakama. Ba means, again, in, at, or with. Okay? or of, or to be. So it's saying right here, through wisdom, and using our same rules, we can also say with. Through wisdom or with wisdom, you apply wisdom instead of evil. Matter of fact, following what it says right here is wisdom. That's the heavy thing about the scriptures. It just gave you wisdom. It told you what not to do. And so when you apply that, so it's telling you not to do this. Now it's telling you what happens when you apply it. So it's saying through wisdom, Yah Bana. Yah Bana. And what's it saying right here? It's saying is built. Yah Bana. The root word right here is Bana. Bana means to build. Build. But what you'll see here is that it says is build. So what has to happen is this actually becomes built, meaning it's now it's using it like as if it's what do you call it? A past tense. Ya bana. Ya bana. Bana again is the root word right there. That's excellent. Ya bana. Bayath, we know this one. Bayath means house. A house. Waba thaba wana. Thabawana. Thabawan means understanding. Understanding. Thabawan. Yaba means and by or and with. And by or with. And through understanding. It says, through wisdom, a house is built. Or through wisdom is built a house. Obviously, we're reading Hebrew, so read it like this. But for the sake of the English translation, you'll see how easier it is to pronounce right here. With wisdom is built a house. Yoda speak, all right? Think about the Yoda speak. He always says everything backwards, right? Through wisdom built a house. And with understanding, waba thabawana, let's see what it says. And by understanding, it is established. The word established is kawan. Kawan, this portion right here. Kawana, yatha kawana. Now, once you get the root words, this is why I like to break it down like this. Once you see the root words, now you just add into that and then pronounce this the way the root word is, and that helps you remember it easier. Yatha. Oh, did I have that wrong? Oh, no, it's right. Kawan. Kawana. And this is saying it is established. It is established. You understand? Let's read it again. Ba kakama ya bana bayath waba tabawana yatha kawana. Okay. What we got so far, do not be envious of evil men, nor desire to be with them, for violence devises the heart. It's not that the violence is what divides it, it's that the heart is devised into violence. It's just the way that it's saying. For violence devises the heart, meaning the heart's devising violence. It says, and troublemaking their lips speak of. And it says, through wisdom is built a house, and with understanding it is established. So you could build a house, but what establishes the house is the maintaining of the house. And so that very same, like, see, and that's why I brought this up earlier. It's very heavy that some people are raised in a household with parents that are wicked, with parents that are bad examples, some worse than others, right? Varying degrees of evil, right? Some parents are drug dealers, some parents are violent, some parents argue all the time, right? And so those children can't necessarily escape that. That's why it says, nor desire to be with them. because that's, again, it's a situation, right? It's not something that they can endure without these scriptures to give them some fortitude in their mind to understand. Because what happens is these bad examples start to affect them and the way that they talk. And that's why children whose parents cuss all the time around them start cussing at school when they're still in elementary. You know what I'm saying? And so their lips start talking about mischief and troublemaking and things that are not necessarily aligned with what age they are, you know? And so kids start talking about all sorts of stuff that doesn't necessarily go with their age bracket. You feel me? And so again, that will happen, but that child that grows up having learned the scriptures, learning their culture, you know, somebody coming back to God's law, statutes, and commandments, somebody that comes into the ISUPK and constantly is nourished in their wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and their culture and everything that comes along with it, then wisdom starts to be gained. And then a house can be built. And that generational curse that comes from being around, whether it's parents that are evil or being in an environment, a neighborhood that has been evil, their house can be built with understanding and is established. And the beautiful thing about this is this could be next door to the house that was the trap house. This could be right next door. You don't have to leave the hood to make the hood great. You can make your neighborhood great just by being the example of your house that has the dominion over the household. So righteous generations can be brought up that can overthrow the influence of previous generations that were bad. And so that's why these scriptures are so heavy. When we're going through this and we're reading it and we're getting an understanding of it, and we're reading it in the Hebrew, it makes you slow down and really digest every part of the sentence. And even reading it damn near like the way Yoda, for violence devises their heart and trouble making their lips speak. Through wisdom is built a house, and with understanding it is established. It's completely backwards from how we say things in English, but at the same time, it's not mental gymnastics. It's not linguistic gymnastics. It's really just the original way to think. And if it makes you slow down and think about it in a deeper way, then Most High Christ, that's excellent. That's why we do these classes, so that y'all can slow down and really digest these scriptures, but at the same time, learn it in the original form. Get that knowledge of the Lashawan Qadash under your belt. Get more practice. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be like Allen Iverson. Matter of fact, that's probably one of the only few people that will play excellent without practice. But if you want to be a legend, you got to practice. And I'm sure that Kobe, Bean, Bryant would agree with that. So, you know, who am I to say? Michael Jordan, all that. If you're talking about the GOATs, they practice. So when it comes to Hebrew, we got to practice it also. Let's read what we got so far. What we're at so far. Al taqwana'a ba anashya ra'ai wa'al tata yawa la hayawath atham kaya shad ya haga labam wa aimal shapath yaham ta dabarna ba kakama ya bana bayat waba sabawana yatha kawana. And that damn near rhymes. Let's go ahead and go to the last scripture for today. This is going to be Proverbs chapter 24 and verse 4. Proverbs chapter 24 and verse 4. Wa bada'ayata. Wa bada'ayata. Wa bada'ayata. And by knowledge. This word right here, da'ayta, or da'ayth, something like that. I'm going to say da'ayta because that sounds right. Knowledge. Knowledge. And by or with, again, by, we've seen it through here, and through knowledge, that could be interchangeable. And with knowledge, again, by can be interchangeable with, through, by. They all kind of give the same effect, right? It's just a little bit expounded on by the time you get to this day and age where English gives you a lot of options for those phrases. It's very simple. Wabadaita Kadarium. Kadarium. What word is that? Qadaryum, the rooms. Qadar is a room. Technically, it's just rooms, but yam is what makes it plural. So qadar means room. Qadar means room. It could also mean chamber. You know, we're just gonna make this. We're just gonna make this one of the vocabulary words. Let's get it. This is H2315. Qadar. For you Wu-Tang fans out there, it means chamber. Room, bedroom. You get the idea. Qadar. Boom. All right. Qadar yam makes it plural. Rooms. Okay. Qadar yam. Wabadaita qadar yam. Yamala'awa. Yamala'awa. Mala'a is the root word. Mala'a is your root word. Okay? Mala'a are filled. Now, this is the word that's chosen, but I honestly think that there could actually be a better one to choose, and accomplished is the same thing. So when you complete something, mala'a means to complete. But it's saying filled. And so what it's saying is that it's completed, it's established. You understand? Mala'a are filled. Technically, it's not. Are filled. Ka means with all. The with is applied because there's no ba right here. But all. Ka means all. Hawan. Hawan means riches. Hawan means riches. Boom. Riches. Yaquar means precious. Pretty straight up. Yaquar. Might want to make that one of our definitions today. Let me see. Let's get that. Some positive definitions up here. This is H3368. Yaquar. Yaquar. And this means precious. But it also means, it also means costly. It can also mean rare or noble. Yaquar. Sounds like a decent name you could give to a firstborn, or you know what I'm saying, a kid that you expect to do great things. Yaquar. Wa na ayam. Last word. Wa na ayam. And pleasant. So the root word right here is na ayam. And one thing that you'll notice is that this is actually the root word, and yam is included in it. Na ayam. So by definition, this word actually is plural. So when it's saying pleasant, it's saying pleasant as if it's an abundance of something. Okay? When somebody is nice, they're nice. When somebody is pleasant, they're constantly nice. And so na'ayam makes it plural. But the plural version, there's no plural version of it. It's already plural. So somebody that's pleasant, this is a wa right here, so that just means And so when we translate verse 4 into English, this is how it is in the KJV. It says, "And by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches." And by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. We use this word right here, rooms. This is what it translates to in there, but chambers. Imagine you have children and they're like, I will retire to my chamber. Who the fuck calls this a chamber, man? Rooms, right? In Spanish, it's habitación, your habitation, almost like you're a damn animal. But chamber, room, chambers sound like you live in a damn castle. Rooms is what we know of today because we live in damn near like little huts, apartments, and little houses with little 12 by 12s, right? A little room, right? But chamber, you know what I'm saying? It's the same thing. But with knowledge, those rooms are filled with precious and pleasant riches. You know, somebody that knows how to take care of this stuff, somebody that has the wisdom and the knowledge to refrain from evil things. There's a major difference in a house that was established and built and furnished with a legit source of income. And then there's a different vibe in a house that is filled with things that are from, ill-gotten goods. You understand? Sometimes people, they'll go and steal a TV from another house. They'll steal the PlayStation from another house. They'll put it in their house, and the house itself just has a vibe to it that's not cozy. It's not legitimate. It doesn't feel precious. It doesn't feel right. It's just the vibe that comes with it. And there's no doubt that actually is a completely different environment because it's not through wisdom that house was built. It's not through understanding that house was built. The walls start to smell weird because of all the smoke. You understand? The bathroom not taken care of because there's no discipline in the house. So there's dirt everywhere. If it was ran by a military personnel, they come in there and give you demerits left and right. You understand? Because there's no discipline, because there's no wisdom that's involved in a house like that. It's hard. And the scripture says, to be double-minded is not good. The scripture says, what's the scripture that says, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And so if you're double-minded, it's hard to be righteous and messy and destructive and violent. But when you're wicked, it's hard to be disciplined. It's hard to be calm. It's hard to be nice when you have that type of mentality because, again, it makes you unstable to be more than one thing at once. You can't just be more than one thing at once. And so what we have here is an entire lesson. We broke down verses 1 through 4. These are some excellent verses right here. This is something to take into heart. Read this, practice writing it, practice reading it in the Hebrew. Understand these definitions. That's one of the reasons why I like to go down here to give you alternative definitions for the same words. You can interchange them when you're translating it, and that'll help you understand it more. But what's going to be the best thing to understand is how to pronounce it in the Lashawan Qadash. So let's go ahead and finish the class off today by reading it twice in the ancient Hebrew, and we'll go ahead and recap this one at the beginning of the next class. Again, what are we reading? It's Al Thaqwana'ah Ba'anashya Ra'ai Wa'al Tata Ayawa Tata Ayawa. It's like Tata Ayawa La Hayawath La Hayawath Atham Kaya Shad Yahaga Labam Wa Aimal Shapath Yaham Ta Dabarna, okay. Ba Chakama Ya Bana Bayath Waba Tabawana Yata Kawana Waba Daita Kadarium Ya Malaawa Kal, Hawan, Yaquar, Wana'ayam. Wana'ayam. And that's Proverbs chapter 21, verses 1 through 4. Let's go ahead and read it one more time, and we'll translate it to the English. Al Taqwana Ba Anashya Ra'ai Wa'al Thatha Ayawa La Hayawath Atham Kaya Shad Yahaga Labam Wa Aimal Shapath Ta Dabarna Bacha Kama Ya Bana Bayath Waba Dabawana Waya Kawana Waba Da'ayata Kadaryam Wa Malaawa Kal Hawan Yaquar Wana'ayam. That right there is Proverbs chapter 21, verse 1 through 4. In English, it says, not do be envious of men of evil, nor desire to be with them. For violence devises the heart, and trouble making their lips speak. With wisdom is built a house, and with understanding it is established. And by knowledge the chambers are filled with all riches, precious and pleasant. That again, the way it flows is different from English. It's an ancient way of thinking. It's completely backwards from the day. You know, the scripture even says that the foundation of the earth is destroyed because of the breaking of the covenant. What does it say? The scripture escapes me here at the moment. But what it's saying is that what I'm trying to say is that the language itself is backwards the way it's translated, the way it's said. It kind of makes you think about it in a deeper way when you speak it in that particular rhythm. Not to be envious of evil men or men of evil, nor desire to be with them. For violence devises their heart, and trouble making their lips speak. Through wisdom is built a house, and by understanding it is established. And by knowledge the chambers are filled with riches, with all riches, precious and pleasant. So you want to build a house, nice things, to sustain a stable mind, to have a house where there's no argument, where there's going to be some arguments, but obviously you'll be able to work through them, any kind of discrepancies, any kind of struggles, those types of things. And not only is it that when you have these types of things that are riches, that are precious and pleasant, you'll take care of them better because you'll understand the benefit of being good and having things and being a responsible person that can actually own these things and keep these things and have a house with people that are working together rather than trying to tear each other apart. And so in the ISUPK, it's a very practical knowledge. This is something that we shouldn't have to say, but we have to say it. We shouldn't have to, but we have to. Because unfortunately, what we see in a lot of houses amongst Black, Hispanic, and Native Americans is completely backwards from this. So let's read this, and we have to read it backwards because it's in Hebrew. And with that, this is the ISUPK that started out at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York in 1969 under commanding General Yohana. And we're here to teach the truth of the Bible. The so-called Black, Hispanic, Native American Indians are the real Israelites according to the scriptures. With that, Shalom, Yahweh Shem Yahshua Brakatham, Yahweh Shamar Alatan Bahasham, Yahweh Shai.